back for another day. No joke to open this one, but a point of note. A comment on my flight mechanics video pointed out that hypothetically a Pixie PC would and likely should be able to hover in combat. I wish I had thought of that as an example. So the framework for flight maneuverability can stand for small and larger sized creatures and player characters, but for tiny sized PCs, that being less than 2 feet tall, if they can fly, they potentially can and potentially should hover while fighting. So a special thanks to Salamander the Bottle Goblin, Salamander the Bottle Gnome. I don't want to misidentify someone like that, for pointing out a great idea that I missed. Okay, we have at this point built a reasonably believable culture for our particular group of goblins. They live in single-family roundhouses with a communal longhouse as a centerpiece for their villages. They farm tough, fibrous vegetables. They raise chickens and ducks and focus their efforts raising goats and riding them. They have a system of governance focusing on respect for elders and making decisions with an eye for long-term future. We know how their names work. We have a rough idea for their language. We know how they hold funerals and that their beliefs lean on reverence for their ancestral founders' wisdom and ideals rather than worshiping gods. They tend to preserve their farmed food rather than eating it fresh. They eat a lot of mushrooms and occasionally cambium. We understand now why they are seen as odd by outsiders. We even have a few ideas about their early histories and why they may seem a little bit paranoid, as well as why they're very pragmatic. We don't know how they fight. What kind of weapons and tactics would they use? How do they hunt? Are they open about their presence? Do they hide their existence? If they're stumbled across by a traveler, would they pick up and move the entire village to hide again? Would they kill the intruder to keep their home a secret? Or would they welcome an interaction that isn't an attack? We also don't know their ideals. What lessons do they draw from the tales of their ancestors? What aspects of life are most important to them? See, these are things we can get a little bit creative with, as well as still being able to draw parallels from ancient and prehistory. We can keep them in fantasy, but make them just real enough to truly be believable, with a society and an economy that actually work. To start, I don't think these folks would want to fight on foot, especially against someone twice their size or taller. If forced to do so, they'd more likely run than stand. Fighting from the back of an animal, however, primarily with ranged weapons, they might become something to be reckoned with. No, I'm not updating Windows. Looking at our own history, the most mobile and most effective cavalries weren't charging an enemy with swords and lances. They were the Mongolians, the Cherokee, and the Parthians. Horse archers, or in this case, goat archers, which would make it caprowlery instead of cavalry, but mobile, maneuverable, fast, and light. And with the goat's off-road capabilities, three-dimensional would be a way to term it. Much more potential to attack from above, either in the trees or from higher ground or from cover behind rocks. It doesn't have to be bows either. There are some crossbows that can reload very quickly. Javelins, atlatl, plumbata darts, or tribulata darts. And my computer is being a bitch. Close. Tribulata darts, if you want to be particularly mean to your adversaries, especially if they're on foot. You can use bolas, any range weapon, even slings, for hunting as well as warfare. For hunting game, traveling in with a large number of riders surrounding any game and just attacking it from all sides. That's very effective, historically and mechanically, for the purpose of the game. You get the ability to harass, surround, and outflank your enemies without necessarily having to face them in a full-on charge. You know, take a hunting party like that, add in some light armor and superior numbers, and you have an effective fighting force. But seriously, look up Tribulata. As far as the modified plumbata darts go, it's a type of Roman throwing dart. It's absolutely terrifying, and where we get the word tribulations. Even if they don't hit their target, dozens or hundreds of them on the ground between you and the enemy, it makes it so you can still move forward towards your enemy, but they can't move towards you. I'll put a link in the description for that. It's absolutely insane. Hello, kid. How are you? That's a divergence. Okay. As far as hiding, I don't think they'd necessarily want to draw attention to themselves, but they'd likely be very wary of any visitors. But I also don't think they'd actively try to hide, other than perhaps seeming drab and nondescript, browns and greens, very dull colors on the outsides of buildings and their clothing. They don't want to become invisible, but they also don't want to draw attention. Think of it as the result of a generational trauma. After having been attacked and driven out so many times in the past, they just want to be left alone. Stay quiet, keep your head down. As long as you're not causing trouble or drawing attention, nobody's going to bother you. Inside their houses might be the complete opposite. Everything's drab and dull and plain on the outside, but when they're inside, when they feel safe, it might be just vibrant, lavish, garish colors everywhere. That could also be reflected in their clothes. A brown, drab, dull, plain capes, cloaks, hoods, armor. Underneath that, it might be bright blues and greens and reds and rainbows. They might be more colorful than anyone else. So no, I don't think they'd attack a visitor. And I don't think they'd up stakes and find a new place to live if they were visited. But I do think they'd be very careful interacting with anyone from the outside until they've long been proven themselves trustworthy. That's right, I agree. Let's talk a little bit about ideals and ethics for our goblins. According to 5e rules as written, goblins live up to 60 years, where goats generally live about 15 years. So maybe it's an old bit of goblin philosophy that a good life is 4 goats. Say the first one is a guardian for the child. The second is a partner for the adventures of youth. The third is a hard work alongside the responsible adult. And the fourth could be a companion for the elder. We can say that came from the wisdom of one of the ancestors. In dealing with the pragmatism and utilitarianism, maybe one ancestor told them, waste nothing, eat your enemies. It's very dark. But you have to remember, as much as we might be humanizing them right now, they are still goblins. They're pragmatic, they're opportunistic, they're survivalists. You could get along with them fine, but if you cross one of them, if you attack one of theirs, they'll likely all respond in kind. You know, we could come up with a list of taboos or rules of etiquette, like never step over food that's being prepared or eaten. Don't trust someone that wears bright colors outside. Or don't turn your back on a funeral pyre until the fire's out. Or don't fight inside a house, always take it outside. An odd one I grew up with is you don't inhale when you're facing a cemetery. That's in the modern day. Well, as modern as within the past 50 years. So you could make up anything. You could come up with any set of rules and a reason behind them. And it's just a taboo. It's a tradition. It's generationally taught. And they just follow it. And they don't trust people who don't follow it unless a reason is given or explained. Now, since we're on the subject of death, how would inheritance work? I like the idea that you don't take from the dead. So how about this? When a goblin dies, whatever was theirs, their personal belongings, gets burned with them. Not their house. That could obviously go to their spouse or children that might still be living in it. But all of their belongings, their clothes and tools, and any personal keepsakes or treasures that they had in life, go into the fire with them. This would lead to elders in their last days, with the family and friends gathered around as they try their best to give away all of their things before they die. It's the only way to make sure everything goes where they want it to go. It's like they get to read their last will and testament themselves just before the end. As far as what's important to them, the most important thing to them would probably be the most useful things to them. The specific tools of their trade. Maybe, or the most useful thing to everyone. So it might happen that the person or family who breeds the best goats has the most status. Maybe the local blacksmith is a little bit richer than everyone else. So everybody wants them to take their child as an apprentice. Or maybe he's the one with the most marriage offers. We've made them self-sufficient. But for anything they can't make for themselves, maybe the trader, the merchant among them, maybe he's considered the bravest, the most fearless, because he's the only one who dares to go out to neighboring settlements, to other people, and markets to deal with strangers every day and bring home the things that they need. I'm picturing it, just image pops into my head of a half-sized wagon being pulled by two goats, and it's loaded down with like pickled eggs, dried meat, and cheese. Maybe he's the one. Maybe he'd want to hire caravan guards on his way home. Maybe that's how your party finds these goblins, if one of your PCs isn't actually from this village. So, what do you think so far? Is there anything else you want to know about these goblins, or that you want to suggest about these goblins? Give me any suggestions, any questions, anything you can think of, and I'll do my best to bring it up in future videos. I'm learning how to use the computers better, how to do the video editing and adding things in off of the recording on the screen as well. So, do you want me to do stat blocks? Do you want to learn or use the language that I'm working with? Do you want me to do up character sheets for a character sheet for one of these guys? I can't really do images yet, but until I find an artist who'll do them for me. So I'm looking for one if you are one. Can't really pay you much, if anything, but I could figure out a work trade of some kind. So, as always, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see, and we'll talk to you next time.